Our movie begins in 1947 with Andy, the deputy manager of a large bank, who is in court facing charges of murdering his wife and her lover, golf coach, at the lover's house. Andy doesn't remember the details of the incident due to his drunkenness. The lawyer presents strong evidence accusing Andy of committing the two murders in cold blood, suggesting his motive was to get rid of. The lawyer continues his argument. The gun used in the murders had a magazine that could only hold 6 bullets, but the victims were shot with 8 bullets. This means that after Andy finished the bullets in the gun, he reloaded it with 2 more and shot. As for the gun, Andy claims he threw it in the river the night of the incident, but it was never found, as he said. The trial ends with Andy being sentenced to life in Shawshank Prison. Then we meet Red, who is in front of the prison board, which decides whether he deserves to be released or not, but they deny his parole. Red is known as the man who can smuggle anything into the prison within reason. He watches the new prisoners arrive, including Andy, and Red and his group place bets on which of the new inmates will break down first. At first, Red's initial impression of Andy is that he is a weak person. He's going to break down quickly, and Red bets on it. The prisoners are welcomed by Warden Norton and the head guard Hadley. Norton tells them that the prison has its own rules, which they must respect and will learn during their stay. They are given a Bible, their uniforms, and are assigned to their cells. They spend their first night, which is usually the hardest in prison, and new prisoners often lose their minds or someone ends up crying until they break down. Andy, however, remains completely calm, and Red loses the bet. Morning comes. At breakfast, Red is happy because he won the bet, having picked the right prisoner to break down on his first night. The bet was for cigarettes, but their joy fades when they find out that the prisoner died because Hadley crushed his skull, leading to his death. After that, Andy tries to adapt to prison life and avoids talking to anyone. A month later, Andy decides to talk to Red and asks him for a small rock hammer. Red asks why he needs it, joking that Andy might want to use it to dig a tunnel and escape, and they both laugh. Andy tells him that once he sees the rock hammer, he'll understand that it's impossible to dig a tunnel with, and that he's been interested in rocks since he was a kid. Andy explains that he's interested in rocks, carving, and learning about their different types, and that he wants to get back into that hobby. Red agrees to get it for him, but warns him about the guards, as they do daily searches, and would confiscate it if they found it. Still, Red says he'll get it for him, and Andy thanks him. Red manages to bring it in his own way, and when they finally see it, they laugh, with Red agreeing that Andy was right. No one could possibly dig a tunnel. Red gives the hammer to Brooks, the prison librarian, passes it on to Andy. Andy works in the prison laundry and is frequently attacked by Boggs and his gang. While Andy tries to fight them off, sometimes he succeeds, but other times he ends up being assaulted. Until in 1949, the authorities decided to paint the roof. The factory in the prison allows 12 inmates to volunteer for a week's work with a reward of a pack of cigarettes for each guard. Red's entire crew, along with Andy, is selected. While they are painting the factory, Andy overhears the head guard talking about his brother passed away, leaving him $35,000. However, he's upset about the amount of taxes that will be deducted from that amount by the state, leaving him with mere cents in the end. Andy approaches him and asks if he trusts his wife, but Hadley grabs him. I want to throw him off the roof, but Andy says that if Hadley goes through it, he could keep the $35,000. He explains that he can give the money to his wife because state law allows a husband to gift his wife up to $60,000 tax-free. However, to do that, she would need a lawyer, and lawyers are expensive. But I can take care of everything you need, and all I ask in return is a beat for all my friends up here on the roof. Hadley actually agrees to the deal. Red notes that from the next day until they finish painting the roof factory, all the workers will be well taken care of. They enjoy their beers, and it's the first time they feel free again. Andy carves his name into the wall of his cell with his rock hammer and asks Red to get him a poster to hang in his cell. Red tells him he'll try to get one for him soon. However, Andy faces another beating from Boggs and his gang. This time, he spends a month in the hospital and Boggs is placed in solitary confinement for a week. When Boggs is released, Hadley greets him and beats him until he can barely walk. This discourages Boggs' gang from attacking Andy again. Meanwhile, Andy gathers rocks as much as he can. As a welcome gift upon his return from the hospital, Andy receives the poster of the actress that Red had requested. Soon after, a search of the prison takes place, overseen by Norton and the warden. Norton enters Andy's cell and tells him that he has heard about his math skills and that he will make an exception for the poster hanging in his cell. He summons Andy to his office and informs him that he will be transferred from the prison laundry to a better position, like the library, with Brooks. They explain to Brooks about the library and the organization of the books. Then, one of the guards comes to Andy, asking for help with some financial matters. Andy learns that he has been transferred to the library to handle the prison's financial accounts. He begins sending weekly letters to the Senate requesting funding to improve the library. He continues to send these letters for a long time without receiving any response. With his accounting skills, Andy manages to sort out the tax accounts for all the prison guards, including the warden. During tax season, Andy's workload increases to the point that he becomes a staff member at the prison. Meanwhile, Red receives news that Brooks will be released after 50 years in in prison. However, Brooks is not happy about this news. He even tries to kill himself in order to stay in prison because he feels he has no life outside. He bids farewell to his library and is released, but he struggles to adapt to life outside of prison and finds it difficult to adjust. In his farewell letter, Andy bids goodbye to all his friends. Before he hangs himself, he carves the words, "Brooks was here," into the wall. After 6 years of sending letters to the Senate, they finally respond by sending him used books and various items, along with a check for $200 as a donation. They request that he stop sending them letters. Andy decides he will start sending them 2 letters a week instead of just one. Among the donations are some records, and he locks himself in the office, playing an opera piece on the prison's microphone. All the inmates enjoy the piece, even though they don't understand the lyrics. This causes the warden to become angry with Andy, leading to a punishment of 2 weeks in solitary confinement. Afterward, his second parole request is denied by the board. 10 years pass in prison, and Red gifts Andy a poster of Marilyn Monroe to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of his imprisonment. In 1959, the Senate finally responds to him again because he continued sending them 2 letters each week. They allocate him an annual budget of $500, which Andy is able to utilize effectively. He uses the budget to renovate and expand the library and purchase a variety of books. In 1963, Andy manages to transform the neglected prison storage area into the best prison library in the region, and the warden begins to take notice. He aims to exploit the inmates further by employing them outside the prison and benefit from their labor. This becomes part of his goal of reforming and rehabilitating. In 1965, a new inmate named Tommy Williams arrives, charged with robbery and sentenced to 2 years in prison. Due to his sense of humor, quickly gets to know Red and his group. Andy helps Tommy obtain a high school equivalency diploma, and Tommy learns from Red about life in prison. Tommy is shocked to hear that Andy is in prison for killing his wife and her lover in the lover's house. Andy explains that he has been incarcerated for 4 years with a killer who bragged about his crime. One time, he overheard him talking about killing a woman and her golf coach lover, framing the husband works at a bank for the murder. After hearing this story, Andy goes to the warden to tell him what happened, but the warden refuses to believe him and orders Andy to be placed in solitary confinement for a month. Later, the warden calls Tommy in to speak, but they meet at night outside the prison, allowing the guards to leave. He agrees with him to have him shoot Andy and make it look like he was killed during an escape attempt. The warden then proceeds to implement this plan. Andy informs Tommy about what happened, and Tommy tells him that he won't be involved in money laundering anymore and won't cover up for the warden's embezzlements. The warden then tells Andy that nothing will stop it, or else he will have him placed in protective custody and hand him over to the gangs to do whatever they want with. He also threatens to burn down the library along with all the books in it and orders another month of solitary confinement for Andy. After Andy is released from solitude, Red shares his dream of traveling to Mexico to see the ocean, expressing his wish to spend the rest of his life in that place. He dreams of opening his own hotel overlooking the beach and asks Red that when he gets out of prison, he should go to a hayfield near Buxton under the largest oak tree. He tells Red to look for a distinctive rock and dig beneath it to find what he has left behind. Andy refuses to reveal what he buried. He goes back to working with the warden against his will, still haunted by what happened to Tom. After finishing his work, he heads back to his cell for the night. Red worries about Andy, knowing he took a rope from Hadley, and is concerned that Andy might meet the same fate as Brooks. When morning comes, Red's worries linger. All the inmates are accounted for in their cells, except for Andy, who has mysteriously vanished without a trace. The warden goes crazy trying to figure out how Andy escaped from his cell. In a fit of rage, he grabs Andy's rocks and throws them at the poster on the wall, only to be shocked when the rocks pass through the poster. This leads the warden to discover a large tunnel behind it. Panic ensues as police patrols are dispatched everywhere in search of Andy. In 1966, Andy escaped from Shawshank prison. All they found were his prison clothes and small rocks he had used for digging. He had also carved his name into the walls of his cell, marking the culmination of his long and patient effort. With his knowledge of geology, Andy managed to dig a tunnel that would have taken 600 years to complete in under 20 years. His new hobby involved transporting the rubble from his excavations out of the prison. In retaliation for Tommy, he swapped the warden's ledger with his Bible, taking the original ledger with as he escaped. He donned the warden's suit and shoes over his prison clothes, then returned to his cell to remove the suit and shoes along with the ledger, placing them in a bag to keep them safe. Andy then entered the tunnel, navigating through it until he reached the prison's sewage pipes, aiding in his escape. The thunder masked the sound of the pipe break as Andy crawled 500 yards through the sewer pipe, which is 5 times the length of a football field. Finally, he reached the end of the pipe and experienced freedom for the first time in a long while, feeling the rush of liberation. At the same moment that the warden discovered Andy's disappearance, Andy arrived at the central bank with all the documents proving he was Professor Rand Stevens, the owner of all the accounts tied to Norton's radio station. He proceeded to withdraw all his money from multiple banks on On the same day, he sends the warden's ledger to a prominent newspaper. A warrant is issued for the arrest of Norton, the warden of Shawshank Prison, who, in a panic, searches for his ledger and finds Andy's Bible in its place. Inside, he discovers a location where Andy had hidden his escape. Hadley is arrested for money laundering, and Norton commits suicide before he can be apprehended. Red is brought before the parole board, and after 40 years of imprisonment, he is released. He leaves Shawshank Prison and moves into the same room that Brooks once lived. Although he contemplates suicide like Brooks, he decides to honor the promise he made to Andy. He travels to Buxton, searching for the oak tree. He digs at the spot Andy indicates and discovers a buried box filled with money, along with a letter addressed to Red. In the letter, Andy expresses that he's waiting for Red to come to the location he mentioned, and that he will need his help to manage the project. Red decides to travel to find Andy. Before leaving the spot, he notices the inscription, "Brooks was here," and carves his own message next to it. He travels, hoping to reunite with his friend, and eventually he reaches Andy. Finally, Red meets his friend again.